for everyone. So the purpose of the CB-NAC is to act in an advisory role to the council and administration to the city of Beaverton is of importance to the CB-NAC or the city, and to provide a forum for the involvement and participation for the greatest number of citizens. There are no dues or fees for NAC membership, and anyone who lives, works, owns property, or represents a nonprofit within the NAC border is a member. The CB-NAC's activities are civic and educational. Some of its goals are to bring about maximum exposure of ideas and plans that are formulated for Central Beaverton, such as development proposals or other land use issues, and to provide opportunities for input to the city through such avenues as the mayor, city council, city commissions, and staff of the city of Beaverton. The city of Beaverton has a matching grant program that we utilize to fund some of our community activities. If you have an agenda item that you would like to have added to our next meeting, have any questions about the NAC, or have an idea for a community event or project idea, please see me or email me after the meeting. And so I'll put my email in the text in the chat if it's needed. So there we go. Okay. So to start things off, tonight's question is, if you were magically whisked next to President Biden's side and could whisper one or two things in his ear, what would you say? Or what would you ask? And I'll throw that to Tom.
Okay, I would ask him if he would be willing to have lunch or coffee with my sister-in-law, because she's a huge Joe Biden fan and always has been.
Okay.
So purely selfish things. I have no insight on geopolitics, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you want to throw it to somebody?
Oh, sure. Let's move down to Amanda Clark.
I have to pick just one. I guess I would probably want to know more about education reform and like talk about ways that we can improve classrooms and student engagement within classrooms and things like that, for less like sitting testing learning and more like life skills and engaging with the material in an important way and meaningful way.
Okay. Do you want to? Are you on mute, Amanda? You want to throw it to somebody?
Yes, sorry, I jumped back over to setting up the minutes. That was my fault. Quinn.
Hey, I would tell him that I really like his car collection. Franziska.
Hey everyone, I'm Franziska. I'm the staff liaison to this lovely NAC for the guests that are here. I'm also the public involvement coordinator for the city of Beaverton, and I would, on behalf of all my friends who are drowning in student debt, I would say, can we do something about that already? And with that, I will pass it to Rachel.
Yeah, I think, so I'm Rachel Phillip, vice chair of this NAC. I think I would appeal to his love of trains and advocate for some like high-speed trains on the West Coast here. I think that would be pretty cool. Let's go to Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm the executive director of the Beaverson Downtown Association. If I was whispering in Joe Biden's ear, I would say, hey, can you make me like the deputy director of the Department of Transportation or something like that, like under Pete Buttigieg. And if that's not possible, like your backup option, is to like make high-speed rail throughout the whole states, but especially here on the West Coast. So one of those two options, got to pick one.
All right. Kevin, who's next?
Oh yeah, let's see. LuLú, have you gone? Okay, go to you.
LuLú from Teach Parity. I think I would love to join that coffee conversation with Tom's family members. Yeah, it would be all about education and healthcare and other items. But yeah, I want to be at that coffee. And has Officer Bowen gone?
Not yet. I would want to whisper in his ear about Area 51 and know all he knows about those aliens.
I love that one.
Yeah, that's good.
They're hidden down there somewhere.
Yeah.
Which one? Did Rick go?
No, I have not. You
We'll
guys
go
have
with Rick.
so many serious questions. I'd ask him what flowers that Jimmy Carter sent him, because Carter was probably the worst president. Now he's not. Just saying. Sorry for all those who love him. But keep it light. I don't know who hasn't gone. So who hasn't gone?
Greta, I think you want to unmute yourself? Do you have anything to say?
I'd probably ask just an icebreaker of his favorite vacation spot.
Favorite vacation spot. Okay. I think we've covered everyone and I'm last. So you guys know I lived in China for a long time. So my default answer would, or maybe my default phrase would be, hey Joe, stay tough on China. Although I might change that to, hey Joe, stay tough on Russia now. So one of those two. All right.
We also have our attendees.
Oh, we have our attendees. Does any of our attendees, so they're all muted, right? Do any of our attendees, can they talk?
Yes, I just gave them all permission. They're now all
Okay.
allowed.
Okay, well, let's hear what they have to say. I'll go from the top. Brian Decker, are you there?
Hi, yeah, Brian Decker here. I think I would urge him to keep up paying attention to judicial appointments and make sure that judges don't get forgotten.
Okay. Dick, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi,
I'm
Dick.
not feeling real clever tonight, so I just say, how can I help?
Okay, there you go. Fran, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Oh, good. I would tell him he's in a difficult position and I don't envy him that, and appreciate his efforts and keep up the good work.
And Myra Siegel, are you there?
Yes, I am. I have lots of things, but the two that I'll mention now are, please get universal health care coverage, not insurance, health care coverage. And the other one would be to do a lot more to stop the madness and insanity that's happening in Ukraine.
All right. All right. Interesting answers. No one mentioned more trees.
That's on us.
Yeah, that's on us. Right. There you go. All righty. Well, with that, let's kick off. So first item on the agenda is Officer Bowen. So Officer Bowen, if you wouldn't mind, would you please give us an update?
Yeah, I'm Officer Coby Bowen with the Beaverton Police Department. Currently assigned to the bike team. We operate Monday through Thursday. Well, we have a team all days of the week other than Sunday. And then my partner and I, we work early in the day shift hours. I forwarded the most recent crime stats to Franziska.
Just
February.
Here we go. There we go.
So nothing really popped out at me. It looks like it's kind of tracking along the lines as usual. A little bit of a spike with thefts. And now that we're out of the holiday season, I'm not sure what that would be attributed to without going through a whole bunch of them and actually reading the cases. But for the most part, nothing super alarming popped out. I did do a little looking into last meeting. Someone had asked about staffing levels. My understanding is we've got 5 coming online here, getting hired in May. But with attrition, it looks like we're probably going to be down 5 or 6. And there's a few guys that are kind of in the works with some other agencies that may be leaving, going out of state. And I don't know what those numbers are yet. And then we've got probably about 4 people on light duty. So staffing for us with everybody that's in training and the light duty people, even though our numbers on paper look good, our actual coverage is pretty thin. So it's a little off than what I originally thought last meeting. So.
Yeah, Officer Bowen, that was me that asked the question last time. If I may, let me just ask, sorry to interrupt you, but is the general feeling in the police department that there are enough staff or not enough staff?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question, because when things are moving along and we're not getting the calls for service, then the staffing's fine. But all it takes is 2 big calls and our numbers can get depleted real quick when it comes to available manpower. And then when that happens, everything gets kind of, put on the side until we can get to it. And then it's hard right now with the current ability to lodge out at the jail. So we have a lot of kind of repetitive crime that is hard to address when all you can do is give them a ticket. So.
Fran, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask Officer Bowen this time around? I know you didn't have a chance to last.
Thank you. You can hear me?
Yep.
I want to thank the police information officer for putting the police log in Thursday's Tribune newspaper. I'm commenting on those. I see that most of the people arrested already have warrants out on them. And what's your take on that? Is that because there's no jail openings and so they just arrested and let back out?
Well, usually what happens when we come across somebody with a warrant is they get a ticket with a new court date for the warrant that they didn't show up to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington County Jail was only taking felony warrants that were from Washington County. So if somebody had a Clackamas County warrant or Multnomah County, the Washington County Jail wasn't lodging on those. I think that started to change a little bit, but it's slow to change. The one benefit to being so close to Multnomah County is if we do get a warrant there, Multnomah County has been at least booking this whole time. So we've been able to take people straight down to Multnomah County if time allows, obviously depending on traffic and whatnot. But that's the problem with warrants, is even though they have warrants, if we can't lodge on them, they just get a ticket. So there's plenty of people that we've had contact with that might have 8 or 9 warrants.
Yes. And I've noticed a lot of the arrests are for DWI or DUI, or I guess they're not jailed, and at some point in the court hearing, are they offered addiction treatment, or is there any interest in that?
Oh yeah, they're always offered addiction treatment. Diversion is always offered if they're eligible for it. And then we've got our own kind of DUI alcohol court that people can go through as well, and they get checked up on with officers. They'll do home checks, they'll do follow-up, they'll do treatment, as long as they're working through that program. So we have that. Our agency's got a lot of young guys that are pretty passionate about going out and trying to find DUIs because of the risks that they pose, and the needless crashes that and injuries that happen from that. So they're pretty active when it comes to DUIs, and then we often have DUI grants that help support additional staffing for that kind of enforcement.
Oh, good. And I've noticed that there are a lot of apparently houseless persons sleeping in the bike parking area of the city park, the farmers market area. Is that legal, and have they been offered a shelter and their slots?
It is not legal. It is illegal. Everyone that was in that shelter came from the Beaverton warming shelter and got either kicked out because of some behavioral issues or decided they no longer wanted to stay there.
Oh,
We recently cleaned it up again, and are in the process of advising people that they either need to choose to go to the shelter or we're willing to help them find other options if they're willing to engage, but the option of sleeping in the bike shelter's over at this point.
since,
yeah.
since those bikers have lost their cot, does that mean there are openings for other houseless persons to get their cot?
Yeah, there are. In Washington County, there's at least 3 shelters. There's one in Beaverton, one in Hillsborough, and one in Tigard that are all open right now. So if somebody had an issue with staying at the Beaverton shelter, there are 2 other shelters that are nearby in Washington County, and that's without going down to Portland, where there's numerous other shelters as well. So there's options, and there are other housing options available in Washington County. Some of them require addiction treatment and other stuff, or mental health treatment, and some people just won't engage. And that's where you kind of run into the dilemma of what do we do with somebody that's refusing to engage with the assistance providers. So
But there seems to be a shortage of psychiatrists. I know I have a friend whose son has PTSD from childhood trauma, and they cannot find a psychiatrist to be his physician, his psychiatrist.
oh, as far as like his specific personal physician versus,
Well,
because I
his
know LifeWorks has lots of social workers and other stuff, but they probably handle a revolving case, I would imagine, versus a specifically assigned one.
I think they've called LifeWorks and they've been given phone numbers. I think they need a psychiatrist who can order the medication he needs on an ongoing basis.
Yeah,
And
that's at a level that's way above what I would normally function at as far as getting people help, because I'm dealing with the people that are still on the streets that are probably in more critical situations than somebody who's got some family support.
Mhm.
Not to minimize what he's going through. Obviously, if he needs his medication, and he needs a psychologist, that's a big deal. But some of the people you get with are pretty critical. So.
Okay. The last one, thank you for the answers.
Yeah.
I noticed a man in the lobby of the library with a grocery cart full of possessions. And I heard him tell the librarian that he just needed a safe place to keep his possessions. Are there such safe places?
Yep. If you go to the Beaverton shelter, they have individual storage areas that are secured so that other residents can't get access to each person's stuff. They've taken care of that at the shelter. So I don't know what the person at the library was seeking outside of that. Or typically what I experience is there's some other underlying behavior stuff that's not being addressed. And they just want to talk about the one aspect.
And they would have to be a guest at that shelter though to have the storage place, right?
Most likely.
Okay.
I can't say for sure because they kind of have their own rules. My experience is most of the people at the shelter will provide lots of opportunities, even to people who aren't actively staying at the shelter, because they truly want to help out.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have space, I don't know why they would say no, just because somebody's not staying there. But like I said, there may be other issues as to why that person specifically is not going there. Either they've had behavioral problems at the shelter and can't come back, or there's some certain rules in place at the shelter that they don't want to follow, and so they just choose not to come back.
I see. Thank you so much for that information and for your work.
Yeah, and the bike shelter at the library should be regularly open. My understanding from the guys that worked the farmers market this last weekend, they said numerous people rode their bikes to the farmers market and they were actually able to utilize that bike shelter for what it was originally intended, which is locking up their bikes. So
good, great.
Yeah.
All from me.
Okay, thank you, Fran. Officer Bowen, was there more things that you wanted to cover or talk about?
I don't know if anyone's gotten a chance to go down to the Performing Arts Center. I hear it's open now, and it looks pretty nice.
The other day, it looks really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Other than that, we've started our annual awards week at the police department. So they're going through the process of displaying anybody that's not been nominated for awards, and I think at the end of the week we'll probably have some sort of little ceremony. Typically in the past they've done a larger a ceremony at one of the churches that has a large kind of seating room area. Typically the one down at Weir in Murray Road. But with COVID, I don't think they've gone back to that format yet.
All right, good. Any questions? Any other questions for Officer Bowen? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Officer Bowen. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone enjoy their week.
You too. Okay. Next up, THPRD, LuLú.
Hello, everybody. Again, we have a few notes to share. So spring registration is open right now. We have our spring activity guide available online. We have spring break camps coming up at the end of the month. And also we always have a very fast turnaround from spring to summer. So summer registration starts on April 2nd. Also, those activity guides with summer camps are available online. For spring, we already had it, and it's coming back again for summer registration, what is called Centro de Bienvenida. It's an English language learner and financial aid recipient support event to help families select classes and navigate activity guides and what we have available for them at THPRD. Moving on, things other than registration, a lot of open job positions. We're looking for swim and sport instructors, of course, staff for summer activities and camps, volunteer services, and other positions around the district. And we're happy to announce that you can go to our events page. We have events starting to pop up. A little bit of normalcy is coming back. So March 12th, we have a free spring yoga and meditation workshop at Cedar Hills. Then on March 19th, we have two different cultural events. One of them is Tarde Cultural, Cultural Afternoon with Venezuela's Voice in Oregon. If you want to go and discover a little bit more about music or painting sessions, or just in general about culture from Venezuela, we will be at Jenkins Estate. Then we have a Holy Celebration partnering with the Shinmaya Mission Portland, also happening on March 19th. And you'll see a lot of things popping up in that events calendar. And that's what I have for you all tonight. And please share some of your questions that you might have. And if I don't have the answer, I'll bring it to work and come back next month with an answer.
Hey, LuLú, I had a question. I do see those job ads from time to time. I'm just curious, do you folks get enough applications?
No, it's been very similar to, well, it's a nationwide phenomenon, right? We are having trouble filling all of those positions. We're really, really promoting swimming instructors, lifeguard positions as well, but in general, instructors, front desk staff, and other positions here and there around the district. But yeah, we've been struggling as many other government and non-government agencies.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, those jobs look like fun, but yeah, I'm aware of the situation. I just thought you might be having the same problems. Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, LuLú. Any questions for LuLú?
LuLú, I was just curious if THPRD has had some success finding employees for all the pools. I saw, yeah, like lifeguards.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think a newsletter went out explaining that piece. Yes, we're having trouble both arts and classes. That's why the amount of selection that we're offering is the best that we can do. Could be so much more. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes. We're not just waiting for the swim instructors to drop in. We're working very hard on that. But yes, we would have more open pools by now.
I'm assuming that there's, for legal reasons, there's no way to like make it easier to qualify.
Yeah, it's a whole, yeah. But that's one of the main focus, swim instructors and lifeguards. We also have a junior lifeguard training going on. We have a lot of benefits on how to get certified as a lifeguard. So we're pushing from different sides and hoping that we start to see the results of that soon.
I mean, can high school students qualify for those positions if they pass?
Yes,
I would think
16
for high school
and
students,
older.
that would be a really good position. I would
16
think.
and older, it's called junior lifeguard.
Mm.
And it's you can start as a volunteer as well to start getting that experience.
Mm.
And that's a great way to start. A lot of positions are part-time, seasonal, so it doesn't have to be a full-time position. So if you know of anybody, I hope they come and join the team.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for LuLú? All right, I don't see anyone. Okay, thank you very much, LuLú.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all. I missed you last month.
Thank you. All right, is Jonathan? I didn't see Jonathan here, but I may have missed him. Is he around?
Don't see
do
him.
not see Jonathan. Okay, so no Jonathan. I also assume no one else has a BCCI update.
I mean, I could say, I mean, nothing specifically. I mean, voters forum is coming up April 28th. They had a presentation on the housing options project update. Those are like the two big things that I recall from watching a clip of the meeting.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Franziska. Okay. Well, with that, city update.
I can definitely do that. So lots of news happening this month. Speaking of the Patricia Research Center for the Arts, it is definitely open. I haven't been inside, but I hear it's phenomenal. Can't wait to go check it out in person. So it's, for those that don't know, it's located in downtown Beaverton near City Hall and will feature special performances with many shows from regional visiting presenters from across the metro area. A free community celebration with performances and activities is planned for Sunday, March 13th, if you didn't already know that. It's nestled near the round between Cedar Hills Boulevard and Hall Boulevard, and it features a 550-seat theater, an art gallery, meeting space, outdoor plaza, and the adjacent parking structure, which I can also give a more comprehensive update on that in just a minute. The city is now offering expanded in-person services across all city facilities while continuing virtual services for community members. And while many city services were already being offered in person, other services have been added and may look different than previously offered, such as by appointment. Virtual services that have proven effective are likely to continue as far as they meet the city's service models and public needs. The changes are happening as the latest wave of the pandemic subsides, with intentional efforts to improve the way residents and community members access city programs and resources. The city remains committed to health and safety during this time. Visitors and staff are encouraged to continue practicing all public health guidelines. And you can learn more about city services, hours, and news at beavertonoregon.gov. The next update is that the city council meeting schedule has changed. So regular city council meetings will occur on the first and third Thursday of each month, with the fourth Tuesday, the first and third Tuesday of each month, with the fourth Tuesday of each month held for Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency borough meetings. While subject to change, it is anticipated that the first meeting of each month will occur in person in council chambers. Remote participation will still be offered, including for visitor comments from the public. The city council will no longer meet on the second or fourth Tuesday of the month unless a special council meeting is required. An upcoming exception will occur when the city council meets May 10th in observance of Eid al-Fitr, and I totally probably mispronounced that. And due to the primary election and already scheduled budget meetings happening in May. And in terms of upcoming city council meetings are featuring discussions and decisions on important city topics. This month, planned agenda items include shelter code alternatives, facilities master plans, housing topics, Cooper Mountain legislative items, Allen Boulevard and 92nd Avenue shared use path, development code updates, and more. For meeting agendas and minutes, you can go to beavertonoregon.gov/city council. And last but not least, State of the City is March 29th. Make sure to tune in Tuesday, March 29th at 12 p.m. for Beaverton Voices State of the City 2022 with Mayor Beatty. The event will premiere on the city's web and social media. And major topics include Beaverton's ongoing response to COVID-19, economic recovery, downtown development, ARPA funding, and addressing homelessness. You won't want to miss this. And since the new parking garage is in your neck of the woods, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that it is available to the public 24 hours a day. It features 270 public parking spaces, including 7 ADA accessible spaces and 4 charging stations for electric vehicles. It's officially called the Beaverton Central Parking Garage. And then the parking garage has the following rates. So for 0 to 8 hours, it's $1 per hour. 8 to 24 hours is a $15 flat rate, and lost tickets are $18. So does anybody have any questions about anything that I have shared or anything city related that I might be able to assist with? All right, too easy. And John, welcome. I see you over there. Hope your interview went well. And I turn it back to you, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Franziska. Okay, so yeah, no questions for Franziska. I'll ask again before we let her go. I see none. All right, well, thank you for that.
Yeah. That's good.
Nope, okay. Okay, so the CB-NAC officers report. Quinn, do you have an update?
Yeah. Our budget last month, or our budget, our balance was $3,310.32, and our current balance is $4,304.33. I'll throw this into the chat, Amanda. And we've got 2 upcoming expenses that I'm aware of. One for $45 reimbursement for I believe gift cards for the tree planting, and then $1,449.49 for other expenses related to the Schiffler tree planting as well. I will drop those into the chat.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Hey, Rachel or John or anyone, did you guys want to say anything about the tree planting event? Like what happened, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I can speak to a little bit. Yeah, I thought it went great. It was really great to see everyone out there. We got all 14 trees planted. Partnering with Highland as well as THPRD was really awesome. Big shout out especially to Reggie for all of his knowledge and work. And I think he definitely put in the most physical labor of anyone into that tree planting. Yeah, and I think the plan is to have another one later this year, but we have not started discussions on that yet, getting that one specifically ironed out. But yeah, it was great. I thought it went really well. A lot of high school students, which was great to see. A lot of Beaverton high school students out there that day.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone here who dropped by and helped plant a tree.
Yeah. You know, my family and I enjoyed it. We live right behind the park, so we go by those trees a lot. Some of them are really starting to show a little bit of movement and growth. So it's working. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, it was so good to see so many young people. I always think about like NAC in 20 years, right? And these people are already getting a little, well, number one, as Rachel put so eloquently, like it's so easy to just doom scroll on the internet and like feel things are so like awful all the time, but it's another to get direct action and go plant trees and do things and do it with your community members and like feel like a part of something.
Yeah.
And so it was really nice to actually just get the trees planted, but it was also like this really cool community event where it felt like, hey, things don't always have to be so awful, right? Like we can actually have direct action right here, right in our neighborhood, right in our parks, making this better. And it, you know, it was a good energy. People got excited. We also gave away what, like 6 or 7 trees, Rachel? Like, so the
At least it might have been like 8 or 9.
So really the impact was probably closer to 20 or 25 trees that were planted in yards and the park and everything. And so that's meaningful, you know, for a few hours on a Saturday. Sure as heck made me excited and made me optimistic for at least a little brief window. So really, really good work, everyone.
Yeah.
If there was anybody that left and wanted a tree and didn't get one, I still have a few from the.
You're still pushing those trees, Tom. I love it.
They're just gonna. I'm gonna go just leave them in one of your yards.
We just need to do like, you know,
keep
how
passing these seedlings around.
We just need to just go and plant them places. In the middle of the night, we can all like wear camouflage and just go plant trees.
Speaking of trees, can we get an update on how the Year of Trees presentations have been going? I've been hearing y'all have been making the rounds.
Yeah, so I presented at Highland and BCCI. Kevin presented at the Neighbors Southwest.
Yep.
Okay, I always want to flip it around. And John will be presenting at Sexton Mountain. And I believe we're also on the agenda for Climate Action Task Force in April. So yeah, we're making some moves. So far, we've received really positive feedback. We're waiting to hear back what BCCI decides on how and if and how they will support the program. But the NAC so far that we presented to seem really enthusiastic.
That's great. Great job.
Yeah, Miles gave us some community grants to look into as well. So we need to do that still to figure out maybe some funding mechanisms as we kind of scale the program. But lots of exciting things going on in that area.
Oh, and we also met with Jared Lane as well. And he had some questions for us, but also seems like really supportive of it, which is great.
He's terribly nice. So I'm glad that y'all have connected with him.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Rachel and John. Everyone. Yeah, that was a really fun event. I'm glad I went. That was the young people were really impressive. They really, not only were there many of them, I think they worked really hard. They probably worked the hardest. Some of us not so young people petered out at the end, but they just kept going. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Okay. Amanda, approval of previous minutes. My memory, and I could be dead wrong, was that we still needed to approve January and February because we weren't sure. Is that correct? Yes. So
yes, that's correct. We postponed both of them.
Postponed both of them. So okay. So can I make a motion to approve the January and February meeting minutes? All those in favor?
Well, I think technically.
Or how do we do this?
Chair, I think chairs aren't allowed to make the motion.
Okay.
Robert's rule says chairs shouldn't make standing expected standing business like that. It's kind of like, it's just that I think the chair's not supposed to introduce their own personal things into the.
Although you can always just say, "Is there a motion?" And that kind of reminds us.
Or would someone? Well, I'll throw it to someone else then.
I move to approve the January and February minutes as submitted.
Second. To be all those in favor.
And
now we have to do a vote.
Yeah. That's
Oh, we gotta wait for the chair to call it.
Yeah.
Well, the chair has to call it.
Brian calls the question.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. All right, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda.
All righty. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue has asked to come back into our meeting. I guess they were there before. That was before I joined. So they've asked to come back, and they wanted to come back as of tonight, but I'm not sure. I don't see anybody. I don't see Kyle. Franziska, do you see anybody?
I don't, but this
Okay.
sometimes happens. TVFR
Right.
have the best of intentions and then they get called out. So
Okay. So
so
maybe
totally fine.
so maybe it'll be from next month and let they show up later.
Yeah, they might show up later.
Okay.
But yes, so it's always one of those agenda items that
Right.
relatively fluid based on whether or
Sure.
not they're putting out a fire. So
Well, if they are, hope they do put it out. Yeah. Okay. So if not, then they'll start next week. Okay. In that case, just move down the agenda. Greta, you're there? Are you ready to present? It's a little bit earlier than scheduled, but we've had a few changes.
Sure.
So, okay. Do you have something you'd like to present, or?
I don't, unless there's specific questions. I can share my screen with a map or exhibits, but I can just launch right in if you're ready.
Sure. If you do have visuals, that might be helpful, but if you just want to go ahead and talk, and then if people have questions, throw up a visual, that's fine too.
Sure. Well, I can share my screen, and I have a Google map that just shows the location.
Okay.
So I'm here representing the Cordeo Christian Academy. Some of you might remember me from a few years ago. We sought approval, to have the school locate at the existing First Baptist Church at 5755 Southwest Erickson. At that time, the school was looking to locate their high school and middle school. They have a 7th grade to 12th grade population. That was 73 students, and we came to you with that presentation. The church is zoned R7, so it's a residential zoning district, so it requires conditional use approval and a public hearing. So we went through that process, got approval from the city, and now with kind of a changing model for the school, they're looking to have their kindergarten through 8th grade at this facility instead of the 7th through 12th grade. So that's what we're back here to modify that conditional use for. The exterior of the building, the floor plan won't change. They're not proposing any changes to the grounds or anything that you would see, just changing the age group and potentially the population of the school. Their K through 8 is a little bit larger, although the population's smaller right now, but they're anticipating with growth, it might be up to 200 students. So I'm happy to answer questions that you might have or talk about specifics. I guess the other thing to mention is the school operates in kind of a hybrid model. Even before COVID, they are at home part of the time, and then the students come to the school Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it's really only a part-time use of the facility.
Okay. John or Quinn?
Yeah, one of the things hello, welcome back. It's good to see you again. One of the things we consistently get when schools get discussed, which isn't that often here, is like drop-offs of students, particularly that wasn't really a concern for the high school, but that could impact traffic. You always see it like in front of elementary schools, a lot of parents dropping off, particularly younger kids. So what are your thoughts on that? How are you going to address that? If I'm a neighbor on that street, tell me what my life is going to be like around that time.
Sure. So I've got an exhibit here that shows the queuing. It's a very large parking lot. There's 151 spaces in the parking lot, which is not needed for the school. So they have the ability to queue through the site. There's approximately a 40 vehicle queuing route to get to the student drop off at the back of the facility. So parents would enter, and currently do enter, off of Erickson, and then loop around, and there's sandwich boards that guide them through the parking lot to the drop off area in the back. And then there's space for them to exit without holding up traffic. We have done a traffic study, and it showed that during the peak drop-off time, there would be about 11 vehicles queuing. So the 40 vehicle space is more than adequate to serve what we're anticipating.
Do you anticipate issues actually getting into the parking lot off Erickson? I would think Erickson gets a fair amount of traffic early in the morning at kind of drop-off times.
It does. The messaging from the school is to do a right in, right out at that entrance. But the traffic study didn't show that there was any additional signage or improvements that were needed.
Did that account for the additional students, like that traffic study?
Yes, we redid the traffic study for up to 200 students, which is far more than they anticipate having.
And one more final question. How many students, and you may not know this, do you anticipate within a walking distance, right? Like really hyper local students?
It's not a large number. The larger number is the number that carpool, so siblings that arrive together. There aren't many students from the immediate walking area, but a lot of them do carpool. I think it was around like 35% that carpool.
And just one more question.
No, you're fine.
Is this a private school, or is this a charter school, or what kind of?
It's a private school. It's a Christian academy.
Thank you.
Tom? Tom, you're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. Had to find the place to unmute. And this is kind of along the lines of the traffic question as well. Will the new grades be same start time, or will there be staggered start times for the different cohorts?
There's a 15-minute difference between the elementary and the middle school start time, so it's not a lot of difference, but it does allow for some transition.
Sure. Yeah, and again, that was mostly about the kind of the traffic queuing.
Yep.
Great, thank you. I will have to say that I am an Erickson resident. I'm at the north end of the street, not the south end, and I up here, because we're close to the high school, haven't noticed any additional traffic from when, and I didn't even actually really recognize when the instruction started, when you guys started, whatever, 2 years ago now, something like that. So I know it's a bit of it. So anyway, thanks.
Did you push return?
So where's return right here?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Fran, are you on mute? You can, there's a question from Fran. I'll read it out, but Fran, you may be able to, I don't know if you're muted or not, but Fran Miller, one of our panelists, asked questions. There are many cars parked along their curbs.
You're not muted.
Yeah, I was
Fran,
just
go ahead. If you're not muted, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was thinking about students walking between the cars parked on the curbs and getting hit by the cars going down the street, because there are lots of cars parked along the curbs.
I've also noticed that when I've been in that area, the school will encourage them to use the approved crosswalk locations.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom, for looking out for me. And Franziska.
Okay. Other questions for Greta?
Shall we mute you again?
show me again.
Don't see anybody else with their hand raised or anything else in the chat.
So Greta, can you just please remind us like kind of where things stand in the overall scheme of things in terms of where you are?
Yeah, so the next step after this meeting will be to submit the modified conditional use request to the city. They'll review it. There will probably be a month or two of their review time in-house, and then we'll schedule a public hearing that the neighborhood members or anyone is welcome to speak at. I imagine it will be in recent past, they've been virtual meetings, so I imagine that will continue or be in a hybrid format. So I would anticipate that in probably 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up or talk about, Greta?
No, I think that's it. I really appreciate everyone's time.
Sure. So one more time, any other questions for Greta since we've got her here? I don't see anyone. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Greta.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. Now, so it's 8. Dan Turk wanted to come speak about the downtown loop. He said he had something else, and so he wanted to come later in the meeting, and I was hoping about now would be good. But I do not see him. Does anybody happen?
He actually just sent me an email about something else. So I'm gonna ask him if he's planning on coming.
Okay.
Was there a bureau meeting tonight? Because I know that they're often.
No, Bureau is Tuesdays, I thought.
I just regularly remember pretty much any of the city planning folks needing to come late because.
I think you might be thinking of URAC.
Oh, URAC. There we go. There's too many.
There it is.
Yes, let me. He's clearly at his computer, so I'll find out shortly. I hope he didn't forget.
Okay. Okay. Because we had a cancellation last minute of the speaker. I'm looking at the agenda. I think we're almost out of stuff. Was there anything? But since we've got everyone online and we've got some time, is there anything that anyone wanted to bring up?
I was just about to say new business, public comment would be great at this point.
Yeah, visitor comments.
Yeah.
Well, before we get on to visitors, I just wanted to maybe take a moment, step in and say that Brian and I were both at that neighborhood review meeting for the proposed residential care facility at the corner of Menlo and Fairmont. And it was spirited, let's put it like that. I stepped out after an hour and when the thing started to get a little bit personal because the owner of the company was there. Anyway, my summary, and Brian can comment on this as well. There's definitely a lot of hesitancy from the immediate neighborhood about this project. I'm a little concerned from the kind of crossing I's and dotting T's that the developers haven't really respected the NAC's role in this. They didn't approach either Brian or I for meeting time, which is clearly spelled out in the code. Neither of us, because they were using my address because we just had the switch over between chairs. Neither Brian nor I have received minutes or notes from that meeting, which is something. It is a type 3 development because it's conditional use, so it will be going to planning commission. So if there is, depending on what the the result of that are there is the possibility that the NAC could be called on to fulfill a role in a possible appeal. So I just wanted to keep that at the forefront, that it might be worth reaching out to some of the folks to let them know that, you know, we're a venue for them to be using, especially in this kind of case. So Brian, I don't know if you've got anything that you wanted to add.
No, pretty much echo that. Yeah. And I stayed on to almost the end, and it's clear the residents aren't happy, which you would suspect, but they've really made tight use of that space. I mean, 3 stories, you know, the leeways are about as tight as they could get. So I could see why they weren't happy. So yeah, and yeah, to your point, I've received no notification on that as well. So yeah,
I think it did bring up an opportunity for us, and that's to really clarify and maybe have on hand, and maybe this is a Franziska Miles question, like have us some documentation on, because people think they can just come to the NAC and we can stop these things. And I think there's an opportunity for us to have some kind of some documentation, or hey, you know, really hone down on our process. And I'll be honest, I've done this a long time and I'm still not 100% clear, because you don't see these things very often, but like really get clear on what our role is, what we can do and what we can't do, because what we don't want to do is have people show up, feel like we're a waste of time, and then they don't show up for stuff they would be enjoying doing, like community engagement events. So I think I'd like to continue that conversation when we're ready, but I think that's an important opportunity for us.
Did the just to kind of as a real quick aside, I know that the land use handbook and things had been in process of being updated, I think last year. Was that released and I just didn't see it, or is that still an ongoing thing?
Pretty sure that's still an ongoing thing. I know that Miles and Sharon Dunham have a lot of projects that they're working on, and I think that's one of them. I know that I think the land use subcommittee of BCCI just had a meeting the other day with Honest Latinsky in planning. So I think more to come on that front.
Gotcha.
Thanks for going to that, Tom and Brian.
it was interesting, I thought. Yeah. Okay. Thought I saw a hand up, but it went down. Yeah, Amanda, did you get your question answered about the agenda? Yeah, it was just a last minute thing today.
And Brian, it was Brian Decker's hand who went up earlier.
He's back up. Brian,
I think visitor comment stuff, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know
Brian,
if
are you able? I think you're.
Yeah, I was raising my hand for visitor comments. I put it down when I saw Dan Turk joined, thinking you might get to that agenda item first. But
no, that's
tell
okay.
me, Chair.
Did you want to ask a question or?
No, I just have a visitor comment to introduce myself, so I can wait until the appropriate part of the agenda for that. Whatever is your pleasure.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll have, since Dan's just come on, we'll do that, and then we could do you after that, if that's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I don't see any other hands up. So Dan, welcome. Your timing is perfect.
Thank you, Brian. It's nice to see you. I really appreciate you being so responsive on email.
Sure.
And Franziska for always keeping us on time and organizing all of this. Really appreciate it. My name is Dan Turk. I work in transportation planning here in the city of Beaverton. I'm the project manager of a couple projects downtown. One of them is the Beaverton Downtown Loop project. And joining me is my boss, Jean Seneschal-Biggs, head of transportation planning. Jean, you want to introduce yourself and give a little context?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. A few familiar faces from the Loop project. Hi, Tom and Rachel, John. So Dan introduced me. I am Jean Seneschal-Biggs. I work in the community development department. I lead our transportation planning division. it's exciting to be back with all of you. It's been a little while since we've checked in with you on the loop. But this is a project we're very excited about in our downtown and for the city of Beaverton overall. So thanks for letting us join you tonight, and definitely want to hear your thoughts and feedback. And I'll just pass it back to Dan and let him give his presentation, and then have some time to chat with all of you.
Thanks. Yeah, our goal is to get through the presentation rather quickly and really hear your feedback. I do have to say I get a little nostalgic, as Jean said, talking to you guys. I think you were one of the first meetings that I had working here at Beaverton, talking about the loop, and it was just nice the level of attention and support you gave for what we're doing. So it's very nice to come back and you know, at the time the project was really, I would say, a little vague. We had some ideas, and now we have some good details to share with you. So let me share my screen here, and let's get started. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Second here. Okay. Thank you, guys. We'll talk about the Beaverton Downtown Loop project. First, I'll give you guys a little background on the project briefly, and then delve into the design alternatives, and more specifically focus on the alternatives having to do with pedestrian facilities, because that's really the big decision point right now for us in terms of moving forward. Your role, give us your honest input. Tell us, you know, what you like, what you don't like about what you see, what concerns you, any ideas as well. You know, our expectation is there's going to be different perspectives. There's going to be disagreement. That's okay. Our goal is not necessarily a goal of having a consensus. That's not really our expectation. You know, sorry, I'm just manipulating right there. We go. Our goal is to get enough feedback that we can make a confident decision moving forward on a preferred alternative. Right now, in terms of the project cycle, we're in the planning phase. After planning, we would go to the design phase and then construction. The goal of the planning phase, which we hope to finish up in September, October, would be to have a plan adopted by City Council, and that plan would give us a good roadmap as to how to move forward. It would be our to design with a vision for the design, the concept design moving forward, and then some idea about how to implement it as well. Within the planning phase, we've gone out there, including our meeting with you, got some information on existing conditions, what you like, you don't like about what's there already along Hall and Watson, what the goals for the project should be. Based on that, we developed the preliminary design alternatives through some internal feedback and technical validation here within the city. We refine those alternatives, and those are the ones we're going to be showing you today. And based on your feedback and the feedback we've gotten from a lot of other people as well during the month of February, we'll go back and develop a preferred alternative, shop that around as well for more feedback, and then develop the implementation plan. And that would all come together for the final plan that would be adopted. The goal of our project, the vision of our project, is a more vibrant downtown. The loop, the mission of the loop, is to contribute to that vision by establishing a strong connection between, to the south, Old Town, and Beaverton Central to the north. And this by looking at the right-of-ways of Hall and Watson and prioritizing people walking, biking, and taking transit on these routes. And doing this by reimagining what the streets look like and what they function like. Our guiding principle is designing streets for people, putting pedestrians first, separating bikes from motor vehicles, improving the experience for people riding transit, creating placemaking opportunities along the way. Importance for pedestrians isn't just about them being able to safely and comfortably move around, but just the environment within which they are and the opportunities they have to do other things within the public right of way as they're going along. Following through with these principles, all the alternatives that we're talking about will have wider sidewalks. They'll have bus stops with shelters and seating, intersections that prioritize people walking and biking, protected, continuous, and consistent bike facilities, and 2 11-foot wide vehicle lanes. Let's start looking at the alternatives, and specifically so I'm going to show you some cross sections of the alternatives, and then we'll focus in on more of a user perspective of the sidewalk, the pedestrian alternatives. So first, let's look at the existing conditions. Anybody that's been downtown knows there's not necessarily really anywhere a typical cross section. It can vary sometimes within the same block, but this is on average what you have. You have 2 travel lanes, you have a bike lane sometimes, you have some separated by painting, you have parking lanes on both sides, and 9-foot sidewalks. Of course, that 9 feet is not what you picture the sidewalk as, the concrete or where you're being able to move. That's really the distance from the curb to the building face. And as we'll see as we get into talking about the alternatives, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that space and need to do with that space. So this is the existing roadway. Let's look at 3 different alternatives that we've developed based on the mandate of the project and the existing condition. First one, let's call it alternative A, is widening the sidewalks to be 12 feet, doing this by eliminating the parking on one side of the street. Also, this alternative and all the alternatives include a bike facility that is protected a little wider than it is now, and certainly continuous. We can share some information on some options for the bike facilities. They would vary by the type of protection that you would offer. In this case, in this drawing, you have that protection being offered by having it be a raised cycle track. There are other ways that you can offer protection. These bike options are all interchangeable with these, all of the options, all of the alternatives you have for the sidewalks. I have those slides. I can show them if anybody would like to see them more, but for now, like I said, we'd like to focus your feedback and your ideas on the pedestrian facility. So this is alternative A. Alternative B is widening the sidewalks to 15 feet by eliminating both of the parking lanes. The bike facility would stay the same, the number of lanes would stay the same. And alternative C would be looking at the same situation in terms of what you do with the parking, but looking at things asymmetrically and looking at it from the point of view of, hey, you know, how can we create the widest sidewalk that we can to have sort of a promenade effect, have a more significant effect on changing things or really showing priority to pedestrians. That can be done by taking the space asymmetrically, putting a little bit more on one side and keeping the other side at that 12 feet. So let's look now a little bit more at the sidewalks from a user point of view to understand, you know, what that extra space could be doing and the opportunities that you have. So alternative A, again, is a 12-foot sidewalk. We are dividing up in these blue boxes the sidewalk space into different zones. Not to get too technical, but just to make the point that this space from curb to building can be used in different ways. And for example, in the furnishing zone, which is the zone nearest to the curb, that's usually the place where you have the trees, the planters, you can have some bike facilities, potentially some dining there. The through zone is where the pedestrians are moving back and forth. The frontage zone up against the buildings are places where you can have a little spillover of the activities of the building onto the sidewalk, whether that be with signage, retail displays, or for some of the other alternatives, outdoor seating. In this case, you can see in this alternative, you have a pedestrian through zone where you have enough space for 2 people to walk side by side and pass each other, and or a frontage zone where you have basically some signs and very small retail displays. Alternative B, the 15-foot sidewalks, you can have a pedestrian zone where 3 people can walk side by side and pass each other, and or a frontage zone with 2-person tables, benches, signs, retail displays. A little more activity going on, a little more flexibility as well in terms of how you can use that space. Alternative C, the 18-foot sidewalks, You can have a pedestrian through zone where 3 people can walk side by side and gather, and or a frontage zone where you could envision 4-person tables and significant more retail displays or signs. So before moving on, well, you know, it always catches at this point. I'd like to just tell you a little bit about how we see, you know, going to a preferred alternative. We know that the opportunities and constraints really vary along Hall and Watson. So we strongly suspect that when we're coming up with a preferred alternative, it's not going to be, oh, A, B, or C. This is our preference. It's going to work everywhere. Let's just put it in everywhere. Chances are the preferred alternative is going to be some cobbling together of, hey, you know, A works better here, B works better here, maybe C works better here. Yeah, so that's what we envision. And without further ado, we'd love to get your feedback. Here's a question that we'd like to ask to sort of get the ball rolling. And Jean, if you could facilitate again, you did such a good job at the last time. We'd love to go around and get your thoughts on, in just a few words, what stands out for you about these designs. And Kevin, I'd like to, since I think this is the 3rd time you've seen this presentation, I'd like to also have you tell us if anything has changed from the first time. Maybe the 3rd time has given you some great insight that you can share with us. So go ahead, take it away, Jean.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Yeah, so really, we want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. I'm not going to call anyone out. I'm hoping someone's ready to go with their initial thoughts. Oh, good, I see hands.
And I will go back to some of the alternatives, and then please shout out if you want to see anything in particular. For now, yeah. I guess I'll go to the cross section of B.
Great. So yeah, things that stand out. And what we can do is sort of gather those ideas, and we can loop back and kind of talk about what common themes we hear, what different things we hear, and then spend a little more time talking. And I'm going to look at someone to give us like a time check. How much time do we have?
Well, you actually have extra time because of the council
we're started. Yes.
So you're starting 20 minutes early.
Okay, we've got lots of time then. Great. Okay. Let's go to Kevin first. Hi, Kevin.
So I've actually only seen the presentation twice.
Okay.
The first time I was not able to make it to.
Well, Kevin, if you would like, I'm happy to give you the presentation personally again tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks. I've actually got a couple like larger level conceptual questions first. Or is it okay to ask those now, or is there a time for that later?
Ask them now. Well, yeah, let's catch them now, and then we can loop back if there's things that need more time to discuss. Sure.
Okay. Unintended. Sorry.
What was the pun?
The loop back. I just had to.
No, it was not intended, but it was really good.
That's the one feedback I don't want to hear is puns, please.
Okay. So a couple bigger conceptual questions here for street layout in general, as we're thinking through, like, as we sort through the overall like objectives and then like how it actually lays out. Was there any thought into doing two-way streets? So there's 2 lanes of traffic, but they're going different directions. And along the same lines, like a bi-directional bike lane. Was there any sort of consideration for that? Like, I know it slows traffic. It would be a fairly substantial change, but we're talking about substantial changes anyway. So I'm curious.
Dan, do you want to field that?
Do we want to answer those now, Jean, or do we want to wait?
Why don't we? Okay, let's wait.
We can wait.
But let's get your. Do you have other things? Back to Dan's question that was on the screen.
And the question was like, what are some things that stand out to you?
Yeah, what stands out to you? What's yeah.
Yeah, I'll actually let a few other people go first while I organize some thoughts.
Okay, great. Okay, Rachel. Hello.
Hey, so this is also my second time seeing this, and I really love alternatives B and C. The thing that kind of gives me heartburn about any of these alternatives is just losing the existing trees that are along Hall and Watson. We do have a lot of great older trees that are very mature there. So, I mean, I think in any of these alternatives, my understanding is like we would lose those trees. So I guess my question is, what have we thought about in terms of like what will go in that furnishing zone? Because what I would love to see is like, if we're losing those trees, I would love to see even more trees as well as ground level plants going in to give us like the benefits of, you know, cooling, especially as things are expected to get hotter and hotter downtown.
Yeah, great. No, that's a helpful comment. Really kind of thinking about that benefit that we get from the trees. It wasn't a part of Dan's presentation, but maybe we can take a moment just to talk about it a little bit in more depth. So Dan, can you go back to the existing conditions? Right. So as Rachel said, yeah, we are talking about removing the trees that we have today in the 9-foot sidewalks, primarily because the widened sidewalk benefit that we get, those existing trees today would land right in the middle of the new sidewalks that we're trying to make wider and more usable for people. A couple of things to add to that. You know, we didn't really talk much about how the implementation of the project, how we go about building the project. It is likely that we'll build this in phases over many years. So at this point, we're not talking about building this all at once, removing all the trees all at once, and losing that canopy all at one time. It would be something that would happen, you know, this could take 10 years or more to build the entire loop complete. And that's assuming we get all the funding for it. I think we're gonna have to make some priorities and decisions. So we definitely wanna see that canopy transition over time. I should also say that there is one place where the existing trees are lovely, and we're so pleased that the way the sidewalk and the space has been configured is in that we don't have to touch the trees. And those are the 2 blocks by the library with those beautiful red maples that make that really wonderful entry into downtown. The sidewalks through there are actually in the park, and they're not actually in the right of way. And so it's we went, oh, look what happened here. So that's a hopeful piece for us, because those are really just lovely trees, and we wouldn't want to have to take those out.
Rachel, if I could add, I think you even made the pivot in your question. You know, there's a pretty strong case here for just, you know, the location of the existing trees really not being compatible, and it being very prohibitively expensive to really relocate the existing trees. But, you know, I saw you kind of are already going to like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to, you know, to plant the trees that we would like to deal, you know, to look at a sort of a natural environment solution in this area that would be something, you know, I mean, an opportunity to start from scratch, an opportunity to design something that's going to give us everything that we need. And, you know, this is something like Jean said, it's going to be staggered in terms of what we do. It's not going to be all of a sudden all of the trees are going to be gone.
Definitely. Yeah. I would just love to see if we're losing those trees, like you said, like I would love to see us add even more to the canopy that we have, so that we aren't, I just don't want to, you know, lose out on what we have and like it take, you know, 40 years to get back to where we are. I would love to like replant even more. If we're going to lose that, let's plan for the future, and let's
Well,
plan
you know,
even
when
more.
we spoke about the wider space for the sidewalks and the different things that you can do there, certainly something in terms of the natural spaces, you know, if you have more space, there's more opportunities for you to do things there that you would, you know, that is a priority for us as a community.
Yeah, we've definitely heard from others about a desire for more plantings in that furnishing zone space, and more green downtown. So great, thanks.
Great, thank
you. Let's go to John and Quinn.
Hey there, I think we both have separate questions. First off, like I'm super excited by this, and I've been in a few of the past presentations as well, and some of the early kind of community sharing that you guys have done, and so it's exciting to see continuous progress here. My question is related to Canyon and Farmington, so I think I can hold off until it sounds like we're addressing maybe broader questions at the end. Am I understanding that correctly?
Why don't you throw your question out and then and we'll be sure to get to it.
Cool.
So this is yours about the intersection specifically.
Yeah, and it's obviously, well, I think one of the first bullet points you had in, I think, slide 2 was around creating connection between Old Town and Broadway and that whole district. And I just that area, those two intersections continue to be the elephant in the room. And like I think it's almost difficult to call this thing a loop without really innovative solutions to those intersections. What we're creating are two U's with a dead end, unless we have really innovative solutions to those problems. And I understand only 0.2% of the complexities involved with those intersections, but I think that enables me as the naive community member and citizen to call it out as because I'm naive, an issue that me along with 20,000 other residents are going to have as we continue to push for the amazing work that you guys are doing for the loop. And that is those two intersections and our inability to cross them, and the fact that they feel like walls to us, not only walls, but actually threats to our safety as we try and connect the two neighborhoods together.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for chiming in. We'll loop back on that at the end and talk about that a little bit more.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
So I have two. One is tactical with this stuff that I'll get to, and then the second one is another one of those big questions. So tactically with the alternatives, have you considered when you design your bike lanes? I'm thinking around like PSU in downtown Portland. There's a really innovative way they do parking and then the bike lane and then the sidewalk. So the parking isn't right up next to the curb and then the bike is next to it. And I didn't really see that in any of these, but I didn't know if you've considered using parking as a way to protect bicyclists too. Throughout these, that might be a cheaper alternative. So that's tactically the question. The bigger question I have, has there been consideration giving to keeping the parking, but reducing the travel lanes? And as someone who lives in the neighborhood and walks all the time, outside of maybe an hour or two each day, there's no reason to have as many lanes as we do. In fact, we constantly have this conversation around speed. And the reason we have the conversation around speed is because psychologically, there's too much car space. There's too much, it's really easy when you're driving. It's like planning for parking by only looking at Black Friday, right? Like what 99% of the day, one travel lane would be more than sufficient for the traffic. And I think if you ask the residents, would they rather have parking on both sides and one travel lane? I think you'd be surprised that a lot of people would rather probably have one travel lane and two parking. So that's kind of the bigger question, is have we considered that as we're making space for sidewalks and bicycles and all that, actually matching demand for travel lanes with capacity and that sort of question.
Thanks, John. That's very interesting. Yeah, we're making a list of all these. I guess we'll wait until the end, Jean, and go through.
Let's hear from Tom and then Kevin, and then we'll see if there's anyone else. Go ahead, Tom.
Hello. I have also had, this is the benefit of seeing this again. And so at least at this point, I will start off by keeping my comments to what you've asked, which I've noticed rarely happens. I love all of the design opportunities here, these because as you can see, just even looking at this right here, we have 7, 14, 22, that's what, 36 feet of this space dedicated to auto, and an afterthought for bike and pedestrian, and every single one of your design alternatives has increased the amenities and facilities for bikes and pedestrians. And I think that that's great, and that the baseline that you have set is really hits what you have as your design goals. So my applause, and I want that to not get lost as people bring up the things that they can see, you know, maybe we can do it better this way. But all of these alternatives are great. They increase the facility and usabilities for the populations that we want. Now, because this always goes back to parking. It devolved to parking at the CAC and this. And can you answer just a general, and it's just the roughest estimate you can? We're talking about Hall and Watson, and we're talking about the street spaces along those. Roughly how much of the parking in this area is encompassed by those parking areas?
It's about 10%, Tom, of on-street parking.
10% of on-street parking, do you have a number of spaces by any chance?
We do. I don't have that offhand, but I think it goes out, and that's just going out, I think 1 or 2 blocks from Hall or Watson. So that's not the entire downtown.
Right. So, and we just had a 270 space dedicated parking facility open at one anchor end of the loop. So when I'm out in the community and I'm talking to, you know, my barber and things like that, and they love to grouse about the parking downtown. Like, you have one person here at a time. How important is anyway? So I can tell them that this is affecting only 10% of the parking that's available in the area. Plus, we just increased the capacity. So I just want to be sure that when I'm an ambassador for this, because I love this project, that I can say, hey, look, this is really minimal, and what it's going to bring is so much more places for people to come and walk by your business, to come and do stuff. So anyway,
Tom, no, I appreciate that. And, you know, one of the things, and I don't want to go too much into this, but before I forget, since this was really a very specific question, you know, one of the things that's coming out to us now as we're looking at these alternatives and getting feedback from people is that even with people that are supportive of the project, there's still a concern in the sense that, you know, what's going on with parking is not really being addressed here. And, you know, I think you guys are aware of the fact that, you know, the city has embarked on a downtown parking management strategy. That is not moving forward as quickly as we would have liked. And, you know, what we're seeing is that some of the comments that we get back from people are really about the parking concern, are really reacting to the fact that there isn't even a lot of information about what parking is out there, yet alone the fact that this is something the city is working towards and is looking at things like enforcement, is looking at things like, you know, constructing more off-street parking. You know, so there's a broader context here that ideally it would have been something the city would have been doing earlier, you know, knowing that this was a project that, you know, whose concern would be one affecting the parking. So people are kind of, you know, maybe, you know, from a logical point of view, like you said, there's not a lot of spaces, but in people's minds, since, you know, there's not information about
absolutely. And if there's any suggestion that I can make to you guys, especially if you're bringing some of these slides out into the public for surveys and feedback from the, you know, people who are not, you know, they don't know that that the city is doing the downtown parking study and has a plan, is that when you look at these and then you look at the design alternatives, it just visually it looks like you're taking away all the parking, and so people fixate on that, and instead of the reality is really a minimal amount of parking is going to be affected, and the benefits are that much greater. So that would be my only suggestion on that. I'll stick it to one. Has the change in has the reduction in speed, at least along Watson, I think they did it on Hall, has that opened up any additional design opportunities, or has that relaxed any constraints that you were faced with at the beginning of the project?
All right, we're making a note, Tom. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I jumped the gun on the previous one.
Oh no, that's
No,
fine.
no, that's okay. Okay, Kevin, we're back to you. Let's hear what your thoughts
I just
are.
want to make sure I answer the question that you're asking, because I
Yeah.
thoughts a little bit. Can you refresh me on the core question you asked?
What stands out as you see these, Kevin, you know, what stands out, you know, good or bad about, you know, these alternatives relative to, you know, what's there already?
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks. Also, before I say anything, you two have a really hard job, and I recognize that because as I walk around and I talk with people about this, they're either like, yeah, this is awesome, or they're like, oh, this stinks. Like the city is going to ruin parking. And there's hardly ever a middle point. So I recognize that you're balancing a lot of stuff here. So some things that stick out to me, like I love, of course, the improved bike paths. I think each of the alternatives has a better bike path. The one that's there now is rather dangerous, and danger of getting hit by a car door or by a car veering out of the lane. It's pretty sketchy. So these are better. It does stand out to me that each of the bike paths appears to be elevated, like at curb level, which is interesting. Like I don't know if I have super strong feelings about that, so long as like there's not a danger of people walking and people biking having a conflict of movement. But like focusing also on physical protection between the travel lanes of the cars and the bikes is important for me. Like the high school is right there, and I'm like, this would be one of the core bikeways and walkways to Beaverton High School from transit stops and from the local neighborhoods. And like, I would love it for kids to be able to bike to school and walk to school on this street, because a lot of them do already. But I would love for them to be safe. The flex space, I don't think anybody's mentioned anything about that yet. It's interesting. I think when I first saw it, I was like, it's just gonna be taken over by cars, but there might be some value in some of it for like loading or unloading, like a 15-minute zone. And I'm not talking about like DoorDash and like food pickup services. I'm talking about like actual businesses like doing their deliveries for their restaurants and things like that. Or like the handicap drop-off spaces, things like that. There might be some value in the flex space, although if it's choosing between that and like sidewalk space, I would probably choose sidewalk space 90% of the time, probably. Yeah, I think all my other thoughts are larger conceptual level.
Okay.
And Kevin, in terms of the bike facilities, we didn't go into this, but you know, in the alternatives that we show, like here, we have it elevated. That's just an example. There are options where you would have the bike going at the same pavement level as the cars and having some combination of a curb or a wand or painting that would provide that level of protection.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay. I think my other questions are all conceptual. Do you want me to spit them out so you can add them to the list? Okay. So I mentioned two-way travel for cars. John mentioned, I think, just doing one travel lane, or if I think that was along the line.
Yep, we got that. Yep, we had one travel lane. Yep.
I mentioned bidirectional bike paths, and oh man, I might be forgetting it again. I don't know. I think
You only had those two at the top. At the top of the meeting, you talked about two-way streets and bidirectional bike lanes.
And there were a couple other ones that came to my mind too, but I think I just blanked on them. I'll just share them later if I think of.
Please do.
Okay.
That's good.
Was that everybody?
Thanks, Kevin. I think so. Anybody else want to chime in? Okay. Well, let's go back through. Let's go back to the top and let's go to Kevin's questions. So Dan, I'll refresh your memory on these. So did we put thought into turning the couplet into two-way streets?
Well, I need your help on that one, Jean. I can answer the second one, which was on the bi-directional bike lane. That was, one thing that we looked into, and I think that in add on anything, Jean, I think in terms of the functionality of it and having it be side by side with the a one-way facility for vehicles, I think there was a concern in terms of, having bikes, making motions or being in locations where people in vehicles weren't used to seeing them. And then just, basically, the thing about bikes is, your origin and destination is not within the bikeway. You have to get in and out of the bikeway. And, that facility was, I think we saw too many challenges in a downtown environment for something like that.
Yeah. Particularly with the one-way streets, the
Yeah.
bidirectional bike lane on one-way streets. You'd have essentially vehicle traffic, bicycles or vehicles going opposite of motor vehicles. And it set up a lot of conflict points all along the way, right, to do that. So we'll go back to the two-way streets. I will tell you, did we think about that for maybe a bit? Maybe, but really the corridor mission here was around the pedestrian environment. This was not, our charge was not to rethink the circulation in downtown. Our charge was create this loop that's this pedestrian and bicycle connection that really creates a very strong pedestrian environment to support all the other things we're trying to do in downtown, right? Make that connection from Restaurant Row to the Reeser, from the Max to the library, and all the places in between, and really create people places along the way. So converting our couplet to 2 one-way streets wasn't really part of our mission or charge. It would take a much more extensive traffic analysis beyond, what we have set out to do to explore that. Yeah, and it would extend further than the limits of our project, right? Our southern boundary is 5th. We'd have to go wherever they come back together again. I can't think of what street that is. No, yes, 12th. I don't, something like that.
Something like that.
So I don't know if that's a satisfying answer for you, Kevin, but just it's.
No,
so,
it's understandable. You got your
Yeah.
bounds that you're needing to work within. It's understandable, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something I would love to see us consider, but
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing, at the ends, we have Hall north of Crescent, and we have Hall, when those 2 streets come back, right?
Yep.
And the, Hall, this kind of is going to get into John's question and comment. They carry a tremendous volume of cars, and there's very few north-south routes that connect, as well as Hall and Watson do, or Hall going further north and further south. And again, to take out a lane in each direction on those would for us to responsibly to propose that would require a certain level of analysis and study and broader community input.
I mean,
to even consider that. And again, that was sort of another outside the bounds of this project and the sort of the mission we were given. And I think that, so for us, we started with the 2 lanes and the function that Hall and Watson carry in downtown. For vehicles, it was, let's figure out what else we can accomplish within the right of way that we have. I will say there are places, and Dan doesn't have it in his show here tonight, but we are looking at some of those approaches to the big intersections at Canyon and Farmington have 3 lanes today, and some of those blocks don't have any parking at all. And that's a place where we're also wanting to look at, here's what it would take to do this with keeping the 3 lanes. What if we took out one of those lanes and had those approaches to the intersections be 2 lanes? So we could take that space from that 3rd lane and have it be available for people walking and biking, for those sidewalks and those bike facilities. There's more analysis needed there that we're not going to resolve in this planning phase. It'll be sort of the next up study to have to do, but that's an area of interest definitely for us, because it's kind of a raceway. Like I picture that block on Hall between like Farmington, Broadway up to Canyon. It's kind of a raceway. And that feeling of that block is pretty uncomfortable when you're walking there. So there are opportunities. We're actually saying, let's go from 3 down to 2. And Dan, I know you want to chime in.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, first of all, we really welcome the, the thinking and the outside the box. And, we hope you don't interpret our answers as, oh yeah, that's just problematic to open it up too much. I do think that what Gene says in terms of our mandate, if you're focusing on pedestrian facilities and improving bike facilities, something looking at the change in circulation patterns is that, first of all, it's more vehicle centric, and also it's just a wider scope. With respect to, one thing I'd like to say with respect to the number of lanes, that is an interesting idea. The capacity that you have to look at is much less the capacity of sort of the vehicles going down a block, and more the capacity of the vehicles being able to cross the main intersections there. The less number of lanes you have, the less capacity you have for vehicles to clear through. And, that is, we already have some queuing going on at some of those intersections. And that would be something that, as Gene alluded to, as we look at the number of maybe eliminating a turn lane here or there for pedestrian safety, it has to be studied at the level of the network to see if it's workable, really.
Great. So we're kind of bouncing around questions, but I saw that John raised his hand and Rachel raised his hand. So I'm going to say, John, if you've got something in response to what we were just talking about, let's chime in before we go on to some of the other questions that came
Yeah,
up.
it was. Thank you for those. I think the question around and I don't want to speak for Kevin, the question around the two-way streets and ultimately the reduction in capacity is really a question around speed and safety and this experience as a pedestrian. And I'll be honest, my big fear with this is we can make beautiful wide sidewalks, and if cars are going 35 miles an hour, it's not going to be the experience we want them to have. And I tell you, as someone who literally walks these streets probably 3 times a day with the dog, with my husband, my family, my people that I really, I don't want anyone obviously to have an accident, but this is my life. And it's like I saw with the reduction of speed, for instance, around the library, right? It doesn't feel any different. Like, those are regulatory approaches. And in my mind, there's 2 ways to solve this. There's regulatory, which is putting up a speed limit sign, changing it, maybe a flashing light. And you're going to have people that just, some people will respond to that, but overall, you're going to see very limited movement in that. And then there's the design approach. And this was a really big opportunity for us to rethink design and get people to drive slower and safer without actually thinking about it, right? They just feel like they should be going 20, and creating, as a byproduct of that, creating a much safer experience, a much better experience for everyone around. And I'm not saying that those are the only ways. I think there are more ways than that, but I would challenge the team. And I obviously think very highly of all you. You've all been amazing to work with. I would encourage you to think about using design here and intentionality around that design. I don't care if it's pretty. I want it to be pretty. I want it to be safe first and foremost. And I want to feel safe. And I want to feel like I should be sitting on that sidewalk, not running for my life, right? And all too often, we get caught up in rules. I'm the same way. I get caught up in rule books all the time. But I would challenge you all to think from a design perspective. And capacity. I don't really care about capacity. I'm using that as a tool to create the experience. So I would challenge you all as designers, because you all know this way more than I ever could. What are the tools in our arsenal within this design framework that we can use to create that slow cars down, and then make people that are walking on the sidewalk and enjoying these spaces you're creating feel that it's safer too. Not just showing them a spreadsheet or something like that. And I know you guys are thinking about that already, but I would just really challenge you. And then I would say with that challenge, you'll have 100% of our support and backing to do some whatever changes you all feel necessary, because it's really, really important for us. This is not just a conceptual thing. This is our neighborhood. This is where we walk, where our children walk, where our dogs are, like all of those little things that, that affect your quality of life. in your neighborhood. This is not just downtown to us. This is where we live, and it's just really important for those things to be considered. Thank you.
John,
Yeah, thank you,
really,
John.
really appreciate that. Could you come with us to every meeting? Because that is, it's really nice to hear. Thank you for pushing back, because, you know, this is, as every public decision, there's a lot of things going on, right? And, you know, you have people that are coming in, you know, say people that own the businesses or people that want to come to the businesses, and they're like, hey, you know, I need my parking, you know, I need my parking so I can get in and out of this place, you know, and that's a valid point of view. There's also the valid point of view of, hey, you know, I don't want to be stuck in traffic all the time. You know, we want to get through this area. That's a valid point of view. But, you know, you've made a very impassioned speech about the fact that, hey, you know, we live here. You know, this is our neighborhood. That should count for something. And, you know, after all, the mandate that this project has is really focusing on pedestrians and bicyclists. And, you know, let's not just do, let's do what we can here. You know, let's not just do something halfway. And, you know, and thank you for the challenge. And yes, we are looking at using design as much as we possibly can. You know, I think we want to keep reminding people that, you know, within a city, especially one such as Beaverton, there are different places for different types of design and different types of transportation and experiences. And I think that we as a city, through our community vision, we see a vision for a vibrant downtown as a place where people are living, where people are walking around, where it isn't auto dependent, and it's not dominated by autos in terms of the streetscape. So, you know, what you're saying is, hey guys, if that's really what it is, let's follow through here.
Okay. Let's go to Rachel.
Hey, yeah, I'll definitely echo what has been said about, you know, those walls at Farmington and Canyon, you know, especially with, you know, the young and the elderly. Definitely, like, I don't consider going, you know, I live on the south side of Loop. I don't ever consider going to the food carts with my whole family. Like, I just don't, it's like off the table. So like what's been said before, and I know you're all looking at traffic studies to determine what can be done at those intersections. And that's, I think I said this at the CAC, but that's really, like, for me, one of the things that I feel like this project will live or die on. But the question that I had was, especially as you've, you know, put more thought into it and done more outreach, where are you thinking of starting? Because to me, it seems like, you know, the biggest hurdle is making, like, that box feel okay to get across. So I was just curious if there was any thought to, like, where the Loop project will begin.
Yeah, so let me start. I will say we have some ideas, and for sure, because I think what we've heard from the CAC, you just said it, and we've heard others in the CAC say it, which is the Loop wouldn't be the Loop if we didn't address that connection from where you're crossing at Canyon and at Farmington. So to us, you know, we've talked about it at times. It's sort of like the box, you know, in the middle of the Loop. If you can picture those four key intersections of Holland, Watson, and Canyon and Farmington, we know that's a priority. But I will say, I don't want to jump the gun and say, here's where we want to start first, because that's something that we want to bring to the CAC and share with them initial thoughts and get feedback there. So I have an idea in my mind. You could imagine that I would, because we've been working on this for a while. But I will say that what I'll call the box is a priority. But you know, there's more to think about there. So Dan, do you want to add to that, or
no, that's a really good answer, Jean, because you know, this has to do with, you know, often the hardest thing is not to identify where you want to be, but how to get there and the sequence of steps. And I think what Jean is alluding to is, you know, we have some ideas, but it'll be a very interesting conversation when we get to that point. First, we have to identify where we want to be. I do want to talk to you a little bit more about the intersections. You know, we completely agree. You know, this is an area where, you know, something needs to be done. I would say a few things. first of all, just changing the cross sections in one way, one of the three ways that we are talking about here, and having those cross sections pass through these intersections is going to have a benefit. In terms of the environment, it's not, what you're alluding to, Rachel, when you're saying you never want to cross these intersections. I would hazard to guess that it's not so much, oh, it takes a little bit of time. It's the fact that while you're there, you just don't feel safe, with your family, right? So it isn't about like the capacity, it's more about the environment there. Do you feel visible? Do you feel safe? Do you feel that you're in a place that is welcoming to a pedestrian? So having these cross sections pass through these intersections will have an effect geometrically, will have an effect in terms of the pavement markings, the redevelopment itself in terms of having more supportive land use around those intersections where it makes you feel welcome is going to have an impact. Now, that isn't everything that can be done. The two other things I want to say is, and I think I said this at the CAC, there's a tendency to want to say, well, let's have a pedestrian bridge here. Let's just take it out of the equation. And that is something that, feedback that we've received at the CAC and we've discussed at the CAC, that is really a solution to a different type of problem. These multimodal bridges that are built these days are A, very expensive because they need to be accessible, and B, they're built in situations where you're crossing a train track or an interstate where otherwise you couldn't cross. So that's not really the challenge that we have. And then finally, this is a situation in which, for right or wrong, we have a certain scope and a certain ability to reasonably study and present responsibly alternatives. And with respect to the intersections, we're not, given the scope we have right now and the lack of a quantitative traffic study, we're not in a position to really be able to responsibly present alternatives, whether they be, like Jean mentioned, reducing some of the turn lanes, whether they be reducing, changing some of the signalization. We just can't be, we can say, hey, these are things that we can look at, but we can't really say, oh, this may work, this may not work. These could be the benefits. This could be some of the implications. For us, the feedback that is important for us right now, with respect to that, is what you're giving, which is saying, listen, let's move forward. When you can study this as a next step, let's do it, because we see this as a critical part of attaining the project goal.
Great, thanks, Dan. Okay, Tom, let's get to you. And then I just want to make sure we cover everything else. So I'm looking back at my list. Go ahead, Tom.
Absolutely. Okay, so with especially you can see it in the cross section in each one of these options that you've provided for the right of way. That it addresses the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure needs that was identified in the active transportation plan 4 years ago. Now, I understand that this is the loop. It's about this couplet. It's about the, from Century down to Fifth. But can you say anything about how it's envisioned that this ties into the wider active transportation plan? How do we get cyclists and pedestrians from outside the immediate neighborhood into this vibrant downtown area without relying on cars?
I'll start, and we'll see if Dan has anything to add. I think you're highlighting the challenge we have with this project, which is that there's a lack of bike facilities in a lot of places. Fifth is a great east-west connection to the south end of the loop and getting into downtown. That's a really strong one. Broadway is another one of our what do you call it? I'm going to call it the wrong thing, neighborhood greenway, or, a collector that's got some bike lanes, some sharrows, mostly sharrows. And Milliken is another connection, particularly as you go to the west of the loop. And the connections that I know that there's a number of cyclists that use that. Dan's other project in downtown, the Milliken Way Extension Project,
Mm.
which will connect through, rebuild and realign Milliken to connect through to Lombard. We'll also add some more connectivity to the grid, and that's also slated to have new, bike lanes, some type of a bike facility on that route. So we do well in some of the east-west. It's once you get a little bit further north or south, those connections become harder. So there's a lot more we need to build to add to that network that we have. But that's really our goal with the active transportation plan, is to build out the bicycle network, build out the sidewalk network to make those trips much more possible. So I don't know if I was kind of adding commentary to your question, Tom, but
that's fair.
One of the things that I'd like to add is I've spent some time over the past week interviewing some of the businesses downtown, and one thing that's come across very clearly is, well, first of all, there was concerns about parking, and their clients were able to access. But the other thing was, hey, this isn't just about the pedestrian facilities on Hall and Watson. What about the sidewalks on all the streets in between or coming in? There's sidewalks that have some real issues in terms of maintenance. There's intersections that they don't have crosswalks, where people are crossing other streets. They're just not areas, and in general, the downtown area it doesn't have a lot of intersections where it looks like it's really pedestrian oriented. So there's a lot of other pieces to the puzzle, and it comes from the fact that the beauty of transportation, the reality of it is, you got to get all the way from your origin to your destination. 90% of the time you could be on Hall and Watson, but it doesn't get you exactly where you want to go, and that needs to be taken into account, even for the pedestrian network, and certainly for the bike network that must extend further to be functional. I wanted to mention, Gene, there was one comment about the reductions in speed. I think that was from you, Tom. Whether it brings up opportunities or constraints. We did talk about this before, and I agree. I don't live downtown, but I spend a good amount of time walking around, whether it's be talking to people or putting up signs or just seeing how things are going. And it's tough to cross those streets. And yes, the speed is probably not that high, but there's a mentality of it just looks like a racetrack, for us, for me, one of the most important things I think, and I'm going to be advocating for, it's not all about just people being able to walk up and down Hall and Watson and cross these intersections. People need to be able to safely cross Hall and cross Watson from one side to the other to be able to unify the strip. And there's a good amount of work that needs to be done on that as well.
Hey, Dan, so I'm gonna stop you here. I saw that John and Quinn put a comment in the chat. They have to hop off. Thank you both for coming here. And if you want to follow up, if we didn't get to everything, please do. Good to see you. I just want to also point out that, and again, Fran, thank you for your comment about buses, the buses that run on Hall and Watson. Transit is a part of the mix here. We're very fortunate to have that service that runs down Hall and Watson that connects from the Beaverton Transit Center all the way to, I'm forgetting where the end of the line is, but it provides a great service for people connecting north-south in Washington County, and how the impacts to transit are also part of that sort of analysis that we'll be needing to do when we look at the intersections. But also, Fran, thanks for pointing that out. Great. Okay. Anyone else? Did we get to, by the way, John, I know the PSU parking that you're referring to, that configuration. I think it's something that we can talk more offline about. I think for us here, the challenge is how do we get wider sidewalks, right? And that's where the parking becomes the piece that at least in the way that we've chosen to look at this design problem, right?
Yeah, I'd much rather have the wider sidewalks than like a particular design on a bike lane, as long as we have the facilities. It's like, because I used to bike to PSU on occasion. It was really cool there too.
Yeah,
Anyway, great work, you guys. We have to hop. Thank you so much. for
Okay,
everything.
good to
This is
see you. Have a
fantastic.
good
to
night.
see you.
Great. Okay. Do you all end at 9? I don't even know when you end.
We'll probably run a bit over, hopefully not too far over. Kevin, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. And hold on. Did I just forget it again?
Maybe it just wasn't meant to be, Kevin.
I was holding on to it for a long time.
Before you try to remember what you keep forgetting, let me actually say what I keep forgetting to say. Please, everyone, there's a survey open on the Loop. Beaverton Loop is our main site. Please take the survey. It takes 10 minutes to go. You know, we're really taking the answer seriously, and I know we're getting your input here, but you know, passing that on in that way as well, and inform others that you know that are interested in showing their giving us their ideas as well. The link is, here's the link online, but it's also on the website, the front page.
Okay, and I remembered. Some parts of Watson Hall have been closed recently. Like one lane of traffic has been closed recently due to construction on different parts. And I feel like that's a really great way to get some live action studies of how the surrounding network of streets is affected when a lane of traffic on Watson Hall are closed. I don't know if that's part of like traditional studies, but I think it's worth like looking into, or if the city wants to test anything out, just putting out some barrels or cones for a weekend or a couple days to see what happens. I think it'd give us some good like practical insights.
Kevin, do you know exactly where those were?
Yeah, it's Watson between Broadway and Canyon. That might have been about a month ago or so. That's probably the most recent one. I've seen it a few times, and each time on my bike, I'm always like, "Oh, this is nice." It felt much nicer. I don't know how it affected everything else around it, but I thought it was interesting.
Was it road work or was it work on the buildings?
I think it was usually like road work or like going into the utilities beneath the street, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I think it could just be a good way to show the community like what happens if there's a change.
Okay. Anyone else? Did we get to everything? I think we may have.
I think we did.
In some fashion. Okay.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you all.
Well, Jean, Dan, thank you so much for coming. And again, your timing was perfect. Right when we had a lull in the agenda, you guys popped right in, and that was great. That's the first time I saw it. It's really exciting. The Farmington Canyon issues aside, because I'm south of the park, I'm south of that as well, and it's definitely, and I ride my bike a lot, but that's a psychological barrier. But I'm sure you've heard that multitude of times as well as tonight. You know, on the parking, it's a general question, a rhetorical one. I wonder how many residents know about the new parking lot, because parking is always a big thing, right? Oh, you're going to take away parking, and to Tom's point, it's not that much parking that might be taken away, but even that, it's like, do people know? Do all the businesses know that, hey, there's this brand new parking lot not that far away, and it's you know, it's just something for all of us to keep in mind, to keep making a point of that. I think the awareness, at least in my very small sample size, the awareness of that is still pretty low, but it's there.
Great. Okay. Thank you so
Well,
much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, and timing wise, you know, the survey will still be open. Give us your feedback. We'll go back working on the preferred alternative. We'll come back and talk to you guys likely in May. So we're looking forward to that conversation as well. And you know, thank you for so many good ideas and some challenging questions as well. We really appreciate your time.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Brian, I think you're still there if you wanted to speak, Brian Decker. Brian, I will say that, Kevin Barton's office reached out to me recently, and they said they wanted to come speak at the next possible meeting, and I said April. And then in turn, I went on your site, filled out a form, and then got a response from one of your staff members. I think his name was Sonny, because I made the same invitation. I said, hey, Kevin Barton's, either himself or one of his office staff will be at the next NAC meeting in April. Would you like to come? And Sonny wrote back and said yes. So just to let you know, kind of as a preempt, that both of you are scheduled to be on the agenda next month. We kind of be able to talk about the things that you want to talk about. But if you'd like to give a quick introduction or and say whatever you might say, yeah, please go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Brian. Yeah, I just wanted to reach out. I'm your neighbor down in the Highland neighborhood. I'm running to be district attorney in Washington County. I want to be respectful of your time, so I'll give you just like the 90-second overview of who I am and why this is an important race. I'm a former public defender here in Washington County. I'm a former federal prosecutor in President Obama's Justice Department. The district attorney is the lawyer who is in charge of prosecuting crimes for the county, and the policies of the DA are the decisions that affect the outcomes of the thousands of criminal cases that we have in Washington County every year. So I'm running because we need a district attorney to do more to address root causes like addiction, mental illness, and homelessness, so that we can achieve safety through accountability, rehabilitation, and prevention. We need to end discrimination in the criminal justice system and the system's negative impact on Black and Brown people, people with disabilities, and LGBTQ+ folks. We need to present more options and better service for victims and survivors. And we need to deal with neglected crimes like wage theft and environmental crimes. I just want to close with the fact I love Beaverton. I live in Highland. I'm raising my daughter. She's a first grader at Vose. My mom lives like a mile and a half away from us. I think she technically might be in Central. I need to look at the boundaries. But if you want to learn more about my race, please go to deckerforda.com or reach out to me directly at brian@deckerforda.com. I'm always looking for more opportunities to connect with individuals and groups. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. And again, I've got both you and Kevin Barton's office slated for next month's agenda. So you'll have more time to talk about things you want to talk about.
And next time you'll know me as a familiar voice. So I'll see you then.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. All right. So apologies for the overrun, folks. But were there any other last comments, questions from anyone? And thanks for those who stayed on and over. And I don't see anyone. Okay. Amanda, any questions from you on anything on the notes?
Looks like Myra may have had a question, Myra Siegel.
I hit the wrong button. I apologize. I didn't mean to hit the raise hand one.
No worries.
It was an oops, but thanks for acknowledging me.
Okay. So Amanda, I think, are you okay with everything? Any questions on the minutes? I think Amanda might be up. Okay.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. All right. So with that, I adjourn the meeting. So thanks, everyone.